All right, dividing a decimal by a decimal. First thing we need to do, take a look at these division problems. What do you notice about them? What do you notice about their quotients? Well, I notice they're all 24, 24, 24. What do I notice about their divisors? Well, let's see, we got a 3, 30, 300, 3,000. So those all appear to be like a multiple times 10, add a 0, add a 0, add a 0. What do I notice about their dividends? 72, 720, 7,200. Each time they're adding a 0 or multiplying by 10 each time. All right. Okay, all the same answers. I'd rather probably solve this first one than I would the last one since there's so many zeros, but they all end up the same. So I can use what I see happening here to help me when it's time to divide a decimal by a decimal. So let's see what we notice about some of these division problems. We got 9/10 divided by 3/10. Looking in there, if I was to ignore the zeros, I see that looks like 9 divided by 3. Let's see, numbers 3 here, I see 6. If I was ignoring the zeros, 6 divided by 2. I see number 5, a 2 divided by 1 if I ignored the zeros. All right, so basic easy division, but we've got some zeros and decimals to deal with, so we always want to make sure that we're doing things right. All right, so to divide a decimal by a decimal, we have to really worry about that decimal placement. So let's check this out. Let's move off to the side over here, and let's rewrite this one. We've got the first number listed as always the dividend. That goes in the inside. So 0 and 9/10 divided by 0 and 3/10. So this is the division problem that we have going on. Now when we divide with decimals in both the dividend and the divisor, the first thing that we want to do is to multiply by 10, much like they did up here, but we're going to multiply by 10 so that we're able to get rid of, so to speak, the decimal in the divisor. We don't want to have to worry about a decimal in the divisor, so we are going to move it. We're going to multiply by 10 in this case and move it 1 decimal point. Well, whatever you do to one number, you have to do to both numbers. That's what allows that answer to stay the same. That's why you saw that when they added a 0 to the 30, they added a 0 to the 720 because it keeps the answer the same. So we're going to do that in this problem. And then probably wanting to rewrite it now that my decimal is moved. And it's just going to look like this. I got to be a little too long. Because when I moved my decimal, it was at the end of the 3, so I don't really need to show it. And when I do move my decimal here, it's at the end of the 9, and so I may need to show it, but I don't need to right now. Now I've made and created a very easy division problem. And how many times does 3 go into 9? It goes in there 3 times, and 3 times 3 is 9, and you subtract, and you're done. So even though we had decimals in our answer, we could tell that that original problem, 9 divided by 3, was still going to yield our answer of 3. Let's try a few more. Let's try this next one, number 2, and we'll go with a 0 and 1/10, the dividend, divided by 0 and 2/100. So that's what it looks like. 1 divided by 2. Well, 1 divided by 2 makes a half, but let's see what's going to happen with this one. So again, let's zoom in here a little bit for us. We're going to multiply it by 10 so we can move that decimal to the end of the number. So we're going to have to move it 2 spots, actually multiplying it by 100. And remember, if I do that to the divisor, I have to do that to the dividend. So it looks like this, 1, 2. And again, we're going to put a 0 in this placeholder. Really important that we write this in graph paper and we keep our handwriting looking nice and neat. And now, because there's so many lines and dots and things, I'm going to rewrite it. So once I move that decimal 2 places to the right, I end up with just 2 as my divisor. And over here, when I moved it to, that decimal place goes to the end, and I can rewrite that number as just plain old 10. Now this looks like a lot easier number to calculate, and I can figure out that 10 divided by 2 is in fact 5, and 5 times 2 is 10. Subtract, and it is 0. So my answer is in fact 5. Looks like a confusing type of problem, but it really isn't once we break it down and rewrite it into something that's a little bit more manageable for us. Let's number these so we don't get confused. There's number 2. Let's try number 3 here off to the side. And 0.6 or 6/10 divided by 0 and 2/100. Okay, so let's put number 3 over here. And we've got a 0 and 6/10 divided by 0 and 2/100. We'll move it over and zoom it in here a little bit. First thing I want to do is move that decimal point to the end of my number. That's going to require 2 places to do so, or multiplying by 100. Whatever I do to the divisor, I also have to do to the dividend. So I'm going to move it 2 places to the right. And then I'm going to put a 0 in here as my placeholder. And now I want to clean it up and rewrite it so it's looking like something I can solve. So I end up with just 2 as the divisor. And over here, once I move it or multiply it by 100, move it 2 places, I end up with 60. So now I can just do my division. And 2 goes into 6 3 times, and 3 times 2 is 6, equals 0. Bring down that 0, and 2 goes into 0 0 times. So my answer is 30. On that one, I really have to bring down the 0, and I have to divide it, because my answer couldn't just be 3. That wouldn't even make sense. My answer has to be 30, because this would be like 60 pieces of gum divided by 2 people. Obviously, we're each going to get 30 pieces. Okay, so we got 30 as an answer for that one. Let's try this next one. It appears like it's going to be 8 divided by 4 if you were to ignore all the zeros. So is it 0.4? Is it 4? Is it 40? Let's see when we rewrite what our answer is going to look like. We'll put number 4 down here. And we have 0 and 8/10 divided by 0 and 4/100. And zooming that in. Again, I want to move that decimal point to the end of my number, so by multiplying by 100. Whatever I do to the divisor, I also have to do to the dividend. So I'm going to move it 2 places to the right and put a 0 in there in my placeholder. Then I want to rewrite it and clean it up a little bit. So this rewritten would just be 4 as my divisor. And on this side, I would end up with 80 as my dividend. All right, so 4 goes into 8 2 times, and 2 times 4 is 8, and you subtract and you get 0. You check to make sure 0 is smaller than 4. You bring down your next number, and 4 goes into 0 0 times, and 0 times 4 is 0. And now I'm finished. So my answer should in fact end up being 20, not 2, not 0.2, but 20. So it can make all the difference sometimes in what we think our answers might be once we rewrite them and use our long division, dividing a decimal by a decimal to know for sure what our answers should in fact be. Okay, let's try let's try number 17 down here for something a little different. So down here, we're going to put number 17, and let's go 0.7 or 0 7/10 divided by, I want to make sure I have enough spots here. We've got 0 and 28 tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10 thousandths. So 28 10 thousandths. So 0 and 7/10 divided by 0 and 28 10 thousandths. Whew. Okay, lots of decimal movement, but we can do it. So we are going to move our decimal to the end. So 1, 2, 3, and 4 places to the right. That means we do the same thing over here. 1, 2, 3, 4 places to our right, put our decimal, and then we have to fill up this space with our zeros. And now we want to rewrite it and clean it up here a little bit. So we've got a 28 as our divisor, and it looks like we have 7,000 as our dividend. Now we go through our steps. Does McDonald's serve cheeseburgers? And we see how we do. So 28 can't go into 7. 28 can go into 70. We just have to figure out how many times can 28 go into 70. Well, 2 into 7 would probably be 3 times. Let's try 28 times 3. That's 84. That's a little bit too much. So let's do 28 times 2, and we get 56. So it goes in there 2 times, and 2 times 28 is 56. And we subtract. 10 minus 6 is 4, and 6 minus 5 is 1. We check to make sure 14 is smaller than 28. We bring down our next number. And how many times does 28 go into 140? Well, there's 3 times. Well, let's try it 5 times. We get 8 times 5 is 40. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 4 more is 140. So 28 goes into 140 5 times. 5 times 28 is 140. Sorry. Is 140. Subtract, and you get 0, which is smaller than 28, but we still have one more number to bring down. And 28 goes into 0 times, and 0 times 28 is 0. Subtract, and now we're finally done. So when we look at the decimal, 7/10 divided by 0 and 28 10,000ths, we end up with an answer of 250. Let's try one last one together. We'll try number 18 down here. And it starts with 0 and 9/10 divided by, again, we've got tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths, 9 10,000ths. I want to make sure I have enough room for all of my digits here. One more, and our 0. Okay, and so now we need to do some decimal moving, make it look more presentable. So we're going to move that decimal all the way to the end. So 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000 basically are 4 spots to the right. And whatever we do to the divisor, we have to do the dividend. So 1, 2, 3, 4 spots. We enter zeros in there and put our decimal point there so we know what we're doing. Let's clean it up and rewrite it. So we've got just 9 as our divisor, and we've got the number 9,000 as our dividend. Well, this one looks pretty easy now, and so 9 goes into 9 one time. And I might just know that 9,000 divided by 9 is in fact 1,000. If I'm going to show it with long division, 1 times 9 is 9. That's 0. Bring down your next 0. Bring down your next 0. And bring down your next 0. And you end up finally with your 1,000 as your answer. So in these particular division problems that you're going to practice right now, they aren't going to be really difficult division in math. It's going to be more about, do you know where to put the decimal, why you put the decimal there. Again, just like the problem we started with, we end up with the same answer, but it's a lot easier if we can eliminate some of those zeros, and in this case, eliminate the need for the decimal on the divisor so that we can get it to be a division problem that we know how to solve. All right, practice some of the others on your own. Check your answers on the following page.